you everyone for coming. I'm sure some other folks will trickle in. We have about 30 participants so far. So welcome to the Leonia Action Board of Education Candidate Forum. I believe this is the third one that we've run, so thank you all. This one's a little different. We're virtual. I'm kind of a one-woman show, so I'm going to be both keeping time and asking questions, so bear with me as I try to do that. I just wanted to sort of set the stage. As many of you know in the past, this is a forum, it's not a debate. All the questions will be asked to every single candidate, and every single candidate will alternatively answer questions first. So it will go sort of in a round robin based on who I'm seeing on my screen. Each of the questions has a different amount of time to answer. Some of the questions are easier, like yes, no questions. Those will be like 30 seconds. Other questions are a little more in depth. They'll be between 60 seconds and 90 seconds. The reason why the answers are so short is because we have a lot of questions. We have probably like 25 to 26 questions. And as I mentioned to the Board of Education candidates, they all got a list of the topics ahead of time at the same time a couple days ago. And just to give the audience a sense, those topics are diversity, inclusion, racism, and bias, needs of certain populations such as gender, LGBTQ, and race ethnicity, mental health stigma-free, security, spending, pre-K, academics, curriculum, and class size, academies and vocational training, teacher support, Board of Education committees, regionalization and resource sharing, sports, music, and art, community engagement and collaboration, environment and schools, COVID restart plan, and transparency and communication. And there's a little bit of overlap with some questions where some of the questions will kind of like ask something about two of those topics. But I wanted the candidates to be sort of prepared on those topics. So the way it will work is I'm gonna give everybody 90 seconds to give an opening statement, and hopefully that statement will have something to do with your qualifications and your reasons for running. And then after that, we'll dive into the questions. The one other piece of business I wanted to mention is that I wanted to thank everybody for submitting their questions. I cannot use every single person's exact questions. Much of that was due to the fact that there's overlap and I didn't want to ask repetitive questions. Some other issues that came up were the people who asked one particular candidate a question, and in those cases, I had to make it a question that was accessible and appropriate for all candidates. So if your question doesn't feel like it was there, it's probably there just in a slightly different form. So I wanted just to make that clear. If you feel like your question didn't get answered, that was the reason why. I like to run these forums in as non-judgmental a way as possible. So I'm really asking questions about, that anyone can answer. I'm not gonna ask anyone in particular a question about themselves. So, and I think the same would be true for the candidates. I think really your job today should be answering the questions how you feel like you would want to be as a board member, not, worrying about what other people may have done on the board. Or not on the board or in other roles that they've had. So I hope that's clear, and let's get started. So I see Kim Melman as the first person on my screen. So I'm gonna have you start, and let me just tell you what my order is just so you guys aren't surprised. So I have Kim, Anna, Roland, Dan. So Kim will go first with our opening statements, and then Anna will go first with our first question, okay? That means that, but you'll all get to do your opening statements first. All right, so I'm gonna give you 90 seconds right now. Go ahead, Kim.
Okay, thank you. Wow, I have the honor of going first. Thank you. And I don't know if I'll take that whole time, but good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to be running for the Leonia Board of Education. I'm a proud graduate of K-12 public schools, which I attended in my home state of Connecticut. And now Leonia has become my adopted home, and I really love it here. We love this town. We love the feel of it, the people, the businesses, the pool and tennis club, the beautiful parks, and the schools. My husband and I moved here from Brooklyn about 6 years ago, and we are now raising our family here. Our son Isaac is almost 4, and our daughter Eva is almost 2. Isaac is attending ACS for the pre-K program, and we couldn't be happier. As for the reason I wanted to run for the Leonia Board of Education, I have a very strong background in education, and I really believe I can offer valuable insight into how children learn and grow. I have 10 years of classroom teaching experience. 8 of those were in New York City public schools at the elementary and middle school level. I have proven success with engaging and improving the performance of a very diverse student population, similar to Leonia, especially English language learners. That is my background and my expertise. When I was a teacher, I had a pass rate of over 60% of my students who passed out of the state test in ESL.
That's 90 seconds, Kim.
Oh no, okay.
Save it for the closing.
Yep, thank you.
What I'm going to ask all the panelists to do is just to open their chat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, depending on the amount of time, I'll either give you a 30-second or like a 10-second warning. So just keep that open so you can see it. So for this one, I'm going to give you a 30-second warning because it's a longer time. All right, Anna, you are up. And go. Unmute yourself though.
Yes, I just have to. So good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for attending, and thank you, Lauren, for organizing this. I had the opportunity of attending, being a panelist last year as well. I have lived in Leonia for the last 14 years, and I have twin boys, Diego and Alexander, who are attending middle school. I have worked for the New York City Department of Education for the last 22 years, starting as a first grade bilingual teacher, special ed, then moving to middle school and then high school. For the last 12 years, I have been an administrator, 7 as an assistant principal in the Bronx, in the South Bronx, Lehman High School. And for almost 6 years, I have been a principal. My first year was in the South Bronx, and now I am the principal of one of the top schools in the city. I'm very proud to say that my school has been ranked number 3 in the city. It for me is really looking at the potential that we have in Leonia. We have great teachers and students and families, and see how we can make it better, how we can prepare our students to be the best that they can be. And with that, also building partnerships with families, community-based organizations, and with teacher unions, because in order for us to be successful, there has to be a great deal of collaboration.
Thank you. All right, Roland, you are up and you can go.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining this forum. Thank you to the Leonia Action Alliance and Lauren for organizing this. And thank you to the other candidates for making this a contested election and giving Leonians a choice. By having us answer questions before an election, people can judge who is best qualified to represent them, and we are all better of it as a result. In my first term, I have learned that being a member of the Board of Education is at the same time the most consequential and the least powerful elected office on the ballot. On one hand, the Board of Education determines 2/3 of your property tax bills, while being entrusted with the education of your children. At the same time, the Board of Education has one employee, the superintendent. We do not run the schools. We ensure that the schools are well run. For that, you need someone who can work with all stakeholders, can formulate a clear vision that the others can rally around. You need 6 votes in order to get anything done. Ask critical questions, someone who can balance conflicting interests and find innovative solutions, all the while carefully managing the resources to do all that. I believe in the last 3 years, I have demonstrated that I can do just that, and I ask for your vote to serve one additional term as a member of the Leonia Board of Education.
Thank you, Roland. Dan, you are up.
Okay, thank you. I echo the gratitude of the other candidates to you, Lauren, and the LAA and the community for attending tonight, as well as to my fellow candidates. So a little bit about myself. I have 2 sons in ACS, Elijah and Jonah. I'm married to my wife, Sue, who's a graduate of LHS for 12 years now. We looked to move to Leonia for quite some time, and particularly because of how good the school district was known for. And even before we moved to town, though, I actually signed up to coach the T-ball team through the rec league. I've been active other ways through the community once we did move in. I've been a coach on the AYSO soccer team. I'm also a member of the Mayor's Advisory Committee on Transportation and Pedestrian Safety. So I've been fairly involved with the community, and I'm looking tonight, hopefully, to win your vote and support so that I can serve even more as a member of the Board of Education. Professionally, I work as a civil engineer. And in particular, I'm a municipal engineer in Englewood Cliffs and Park Ridge. I also serve as a planning board and zoning board in many municipalities. And in my career, I've worked on complex capital improvement projects with multiple stakeholders that had large implications for large numbers of people. I've been successful in planning and communicating and with fiscal responsibility through those projects. And those are the skills that I hope to bring to the Board of Ed to help it become even better than it already is today. So with that, I'll get into more of the details as we get into the questions tonight, but thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So our first question is going to start with Anna, but everyone will get a chance to answer the question. So the first topic is academics, curriculum, and class size. And this first question is a minute to answer. So what is your philosophy regarding ways to achieve a successful, robust academic environment for students with a wide range of learning styles and talents? When you're ready, I'll put the 60 seconds on.
Thank you. It's really looking at the curriculum. It's part of it. What is being taught? What are the skills that are being taught by the teachers? Are these skills aligned to what are the expectations for students for 21st century skills? What are some of the advanced classes that are being offered to students? And what is really the criteria? Do all students have access to that? Part of that is also looking at how are we serving the needs of special needs students. What are some of the scaffolds? What are also some of the professional support that are given to teachers so that they can continue growing? What are the resources that the teachers are using? Are they really up to date? Let's look at STEM, technology, computer, science and research, writing skills. And I have really been part of many meetings where I have had conversation with teachers and tell them, you need to teach the skills that the students will need later on, because many of the jobs that we have right now are not going to be the jobs that are going to exist when our children graduate high school, or even later on when they graduate college. So it's really looking at what is being taught, how are teachers being prepared to deliver that curriculum, and what are some of the supports that are given for students to make sure that all students are able to meet high expectations. But we have to make sure that they have the support.
Thank you. Okay, Roland, your turn.
As the Board of Ed, it's our role to provide the administration with the tools that are necessary to empower teachers, to empower the administrators, to create the environment for successful learning for all the students. So the Board of Education's role in this is to make sure that, number one, the resources are available, and then ask the questions, are we achieving the goals that we have set? Are our children learning? Are all of our children, we have a very diverse group of learners, is our educational approach appropriate for all of them? And what can we do to improve that?
Lauren, could you just repeat the question one more time, just so you can hear it again?
Yes. Yep. So the question was, what is your philosophy regarding the ways to achieve a successful, robust academic environment for students with a wide range of learning styles and talents?
Thank you. So, I mean, just to begin, I think the school's current curriculum actually does cover a very wide base. Everything from the special needs curriculum all the way up through the academies and the portfolio classes. So I do think that what the school district has in place right now is actually very impactful. But that doesn't mean that there isn't room for improvement, where we could take a look to ensure that, similar to what Mr. Weimer had said, that the programs and curriculum that's in place are doing and achieving what they were designed to do. So from my philosophy from that perspective would to ensure and require that, you know, an analysis be done to take a look at areas where maybe we aren't functioning, or the school district and curriculum isn't functioning, you know, as anticipated, and where we can make improvements from that perspective.
Thank you. Okay. So the next question is a short question. So I gave 30 seconds. I think you can answer it probably in less. How would you rate the importance of class size? Are you satisfied with the class sizes in Leonia? This is going to be Roland. Oh, I'm sorry. Kim, I missed you because I'm sorry. No, thank you. Oh, sorry. Kim, no, I'm going to repeat the question for you. What is your philosophy regarding the ways to achieve a successful, robust academic environment for students with a wide range of learning styles and talents?
Thank you. I echo what a lot of people have said about that we need access to the curriculum for all of our students. We have a very diverse population in Leonia. The special education population really needs access to it, as well as the ESL learners. I think in terms of my philosophy, I really believe that parents should be brought into the knowledge about how their kids are best educated. And we have a great tool already with the curriculum mapping that's provided online, and parents should really be aware of the Common Core standards through workshops or Q&A sessions, and the board can involve them in that knowledge, and then it would make sure that it's really addressing the range of learners that we have.
Thank you. Okay, so this is going to be for Roland to start. And this is, again, I said, a very brief question. How would you rate the importance of class size? And are you satisfied with the class sizes in Leonia? So that's 30 seconds.
Class size depends on the grades. And as our decision to move the 5th grade to the middle school has shown, it depends on how our enrollment development is. But class size needs to be balanced with the availability of the rooms that we have. And that is exactly what the Board of Education is doing in this instance.
Okay. So Dan, you're up.
Thank you. And so I think that the importance of class size, if I have to rate it, I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, is it's in the top range. I'd say 7 to 10. It's one of the more important elements, although it's difficult to scale it against many other factors. Having too large of a class size makes it very difficult for teachers, to be effective in their teaching. I agree 100% from a logistical perspective with what the Board of Education is doing with the 5th grade move to balance and provide enough rooms for other classes. But I do think it is important to try to minimize the class sizes as much as is technically feasible.
Thank you. Okay, Kim.
As an educator, I know that class size was hugely important. It made all the difference in terms of how much support individual students got, how much support families got. I really think it should be protected. I think one of the draws of Leonia is our small class size, and the board should really do everything they can to keep it that way.
Perfect. Okay. So we remain on academics and curriculum. So in recent years.
Lauren, I haven't answered yet.
Oh my gosh. You know what?
Okay.
I have this thing. Please answer.
It's okay. It's okay. I think just to add to what the other candidates have said, I definitely think that class size is definitely critical, especially in the early grades, kindergarten to 5th grade. As a teacher and also as an administrator, I have seen that the benefits of small classes when teachers are able to give feedback to students one-on-one, when they're able to hold conferences with them, and when they're able even to group students differently just because of the class size. So I think we should do everything possible if we have the resources, not only in terms of room, but also in terms of teachers, right, to reduce the class size.
Thank you. All right, I'm not going to do that again.
It's okay.
All right. In recent years, the board has started the review of adding a vocational academy with the hope of placing students in apprenticeships. Questions are, do you think college is for every student? And do you believe vocational academies would be a good way to help students with forging a different non-college based career path? And we're starting with Roland. Yes. No, we're starting with Dan. Dan, right? Dan.
How much time do we have to answer?
This one is 60 seconds.
Okay. So in terms of the vocational academy, and one of the things I have to promote or appreciate the board for doing is looking at alternative means of education and acknowledging the fact that yes, maybe college is not, you know, the right path for everyone. But the one thing I do believe is the one thing that you cannot take away from anyone, regardless of the format, whether it's college, vocational school, is the value of education. Whether it is, you know, through a vocational program or traditional, you know, high school curriculum, I think they're both important. But the difficulty or the concern that I see with adding a vocational program is just concerns that that students might be funneled into those programs based on perception of their abilities. So that becomes, I think, a very tricky component that the board has to be very careful with in considering when bringing in a program such as that.
Thank you. Perfect timing. So we're moving to Kim.
Hi, thank you. I want to start with the question, do you think college is for every student? I think that's really a family decision. I think our district definitely promotes college and career readiness, but the other part of that is the career. And if a family is choosing, you know, to follow that path, I think that's a larger discussion. In terms of the board adding a vocational academy, I think I would really need to know more if that would be a student and family choice, or kind of like Dan was saying, I wouldn't really be in favor of the, you know, the district kind of funneling a student into that program. But if it was more a student choice, I think that could be a better option or a good option for some.
Thank you. Anna, you are next.
I completely agree with Dan and Anna and Dan and Ken. I think it's a great alternative for students, but also when does it become an alternative? Are we tracking students from early on and saying you are going to go into a vocational program, or are we making sure that we are giving students the supports needed so that they have an interest and engagement in school? That is one of the issues that I can see with the program in terms of who gets to go to those programs. And just like Kim said, it's a choice that is made later on by the parents and the students, saying this is something that I want to do, and not something that I'm forced to do because right now it's the only alternative for me.
Thank you. Okay, Roland, you are up.
I'm an enthusiastic supporter of this initiative, and it's called the 21st Century Trade Academy. And it has the trades and academy in the name. It would be modeled like our other academies. So it is voluntary for the students. It builds on what our CHIPS and SIPs already allows our juniors and seniors to do, but it gives an additional option for students who may not be college bound. But the reality is that any trade and professional training today requires a solid basis in education. And the goal would be to actually parallel track that with community college courses so that they would have the benefit of both the theoretical foundation and the practical application in the trades if that is what the students choose to do.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a question about regionalization. This one comes up every year. It's going to be 30 seconds. I'm hoping you guys can do it quickly. So this question is, and I'm giving you a little grace period too, but I want to keep these short. Do you support school regionalization with Edgewater? And just so we know what that means, this would pool resources, departments, and the Board of Education under one regional school district. So why yes, no, why, or why not? And this question is going to begin with, sorry, I just did, yeah, this is going to begin with Kim. Okay, so.
I want to make sure I'm understanding the question.
Yeah.
Edgewater, do you mean at the elementary level? Because they're, we share the resources at the high school and middle school.
Right. So maybe let me give a little background. So the way our school systems works is Leonia is in charge of the high school and the middle school. Essentially, it's under Leonia Board of Ed with, we have one, member of the Board of Ed from Edgewater, and Edgewater is completely in charge of their elementary education, and we are in charge of our own elementary education. So regionalization would actually combine everything. That's what regionalization would do. So I will give you your 30 seconds on that question, Kim.
Thank you. I know it comes up every year. I honestly think that I need to know more if I was sitting on a committee meeting or a more detailed meeting, but I don't have, an opinion one way or the other if we should combine everything. What I do know is that it's been a great and very powerful relationship to have Edgewater and Leonia attend middle and high school together and have a rep sit on the Board of Ed meetings. I think it's a great thing for the students to kind of meet a new group of kids when they join up in the middle and high school level. But in terms of the other question, I just need to know a little more, and yeah.
Okay. So Anna.
Yes, on.
Oh.
Sorry. I'm sorry. This is I feel the same way, just as Kim. I think we do have a very strong relationship with Edgewater, and our children will get to see them in middle school, and some of my kids will. But for me to really make a decision, I'll need to look at what will be some of the advantages and what would that entail. Anything, I'll be for anything that gives our students more resources, more teachers, more access to extracurricular activities, more course offerings. So anything where we are expanding opportunity for students, I'll definitely be for it, but I'll need to get more information before I make a decision.
Thank you. Roland.
I spent the last 3 years looking into this, so 30 seconds is a little bit of a challenge. Our relationship is unique in the state of New Jersey. We have a larger sending district than the receiving district, and in a couple of years, the number of students attending from Edgewater may actually outnumber the students from Leonia. So from a fiscal point of view, it would theoretically make sense for us to go towards regionalization. Problem is we would lose all control. What is much more important is that we align our agreement with Edgewater and, for example, share administrative positions that are duplications. It makes no sense to me that Edgewater has a curriculum coordinator when both school boards have decided that we want to align our curriculum so that the middle schoolers have the same educational background when the Edgewater students join Leonia students. It would be an instant savings for Edgewater, which is in serious financial trouble. You just have to look at the November ballot questions that they have to answer. But this requires ongoing attention by the Board of Education. It will be a topic for a lot more years to come.
Thank you. Dan.
Yeah, thank you. As I understand, I mean, the relationship that Edgewater has with Leonia, I mean, it's been a longstanding relationship. I believe it's over 50 years. I think, and having that relationship does allow Leonia actually to benefit greatly from that because of all the additional programs that we're able to offer to the students, just simply because of the number of students that we have. Having a smaller school district, if we were Leonia alone, we wouldn't be able to provide as much. So there's inherent benefits to the regionalization, but as mentioned by some of the other candidates, you really do need to take a look at the details of how it impacts just both schools and both districts. What are the pros and cons of them? I'm sure Roland has a lot of details and some insight into what those might be. But obviously, the redundancy in the staff, eliminating some positions that are duplicated would be an immediate savings to both districts. But again, what is that weighed against? And those are the types of things that I think need to be looked at to really make sure that that is a good decision to move forward with.
Thank you. And the next question is also related to Edgewater. So that's going to go to Anna. So Edgewater is expanding rapidly, and Leonia has also seen an increase in the number of families with school-age children. How do you propose to meet the needs of a significant increase in our student population from K through 12? And I'm going to give you 60 seconds on that one. Maybe you won't need it all, though.
I think for us is really looking at what are the facilities that we have in town, what spaces. I know that the fifth graders have to be moved to the middle school, which I completely disagree with that move because of the level of maturity. But looking at what are some of the resources that we have in town to expand. It's a great thing that we are expanding, but we need to provide students with adequate space. A good learning environment is definitely important for students to do well, and also for teachers to be able to teach. And I'll definitely being part of the board, if I were elected, is really looking at what other facilities do we have in the community to be able to accommodate our students. Edgewater students are paying tuition, and that also help our district as well.
Thank you. Right on target. All right, Roland.
Okay.
One of the initiatives that we have started during my term is that we are aligning our long-term facilities plan with our long-term financial plan, and that we are looking further down the road than the statutory requirement for those plans to anticipate increases in enrollment. Edgewater is continuing to expand. You may have read in the news this week that 615 River Road, which is 1,200 additional housing units, has taken a major step. And this is not the only development in Edgewater. And Leonia's population with school-age children is also increasing. So we are already looking down the road in terms of our building utilization and our financial ability to support it. But this is where our relationship with Edgewater comes into play again. Edgewater, although their children will represent 50% of our high school students, contribute exactly $0 to any expansion of capital projects. We need to change that. We need to address that. It is not fair to Leonia taxpayers, but it's also something that cannot happen overnight because both towns have to agree to restructure this relationship.
Thank you. Dan.
Thank you. As an engineer, a lot of what I do is planning and planning and not only planning for what we want to achieve, but planning also to mitigate. Bringing that to this problem, one of the things that's been important to me has been the fifth grade move. I agree logistically from that perspective that space utilization is the best when you spend the least. But when you're looking at population increases with ACS, the pending increases of population from Leonia, a long-range facilities plan that looks beyond the state mandated or state cap of 5 years is absolutely critical. It's not something that really, I believe, is an option for the Board of Education. I think it has to be something that the board is seriously looking at and seriously considering, because this is not something that is going to go away. The Board of Education did a great job with being able to put away funds for the expansion of the high school, so it had no tax implication on the borough. I mean, the size that would possibly needed of increase due to the increases in population we're looking at probably couldn't be done in a similar fashion, but certainly the planning for that has to start now.
Thank you. Kim.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with that. The planning really has to begin early. I think we don't want to catch the public off guard. We want to inform them as much as possible. And in terms of the long range facilities plan to address a lot of these issues with Edgewater expanding, I really think the public needs to have the knowledge and they need to be aware of the data. So as long as we can do that and not catch them off guard and plan as much in the future as we can, then I trust the board will make good decisions.
Thank you. Okay, so this next question, where are we? Okay. I think this next question is for Roland. Would you support expanding pre-K, which we know is going to be expanding anyway, but specifically, would you be interested in taking tuition-paying students from other towns for pre-K? And in that vein, if for some crazy reason after we just had that discussion, there were seats in classrooms, in other grades, should we seek out tuition-paying students for other grades? And I'm going to give you a minute to kind of get all that down.
So in some fashion, we're already doing that. Where we have space available, we are accepting tuition paying students from out of district. As far as pre-K is concerned, we have a legal requirement to provide inclusion classes for special education pre-K students, for which we must provide pre-K. We had a discussion about class size. Once the pre-K special education inclusion classes reach a certain size, we have to split them into 2 sessions, at which point we can offer additional pre-K places for general education students. But this is always reacting to the need of what we have to provide statutorily. What we have started to look at is what it would take to actually expand our pre-K program, because we have a long waiting list. We have a lot more parents in town that would love to send their children tuition paying to our pre-K program. How we can enable that, generate additional revenues, and have the space available for it. Again, we need to balance our legal requirements with the space that is available, and then we can move forward with that. We have already started those discussions.
Thank you. Dan.
Yeah, I think from the perspective, so we do know that the pre-K classes are going to be expanding with the 5th grade move. So there will be some more room there. Leonia having a pre-K program at the reduced tuition compared to other private pre-K programs is a great resource. But I do think that it's a great resource for Leonia first. If there is room then after, enrollment has been filled by Leonia parents that want to send their kids to pre-K, then I think it's a viable option to open it up for other towns. But only after the Leonia needs are met first. And then in terms of the other part of the question for other grades, I think we're already approaching capacity issues. So I think that subject would need to be,
I think he's
Did we lose Dan? We lost Dan for a moment. All right, everybody else, you're still with me, right? All right, we'll come back to Dan. We'll give him some time at the beginning of his next question. So, Kim, do you want to answer that question?
Sure. Roland already said that we do take some tuition from other towns with our special ed pre-K. In terms of expanding the pre-K, I think we still need to keep the class size small. So we have to balance that. If we're going to add more students, are they going to be added to existing classes, or would we create a whole new class? Then it gets into the issue of staffing and finding quality teachers. We would need to look at the budget to see if we could support that, the hiring of extra pre-K teachers, if we wanted to expand the pre-K program. It goes back to staffing and class size more than anything.
Thank you.
Lauren, Dan is reconnecting now.
He is?
Yes.
I don't see him. Do you see him? He's not popped
No,
up.
no, he texted me.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't you answer that question?
Yes.
And then hopefully he'll be back by then.
I think pre-K is definitely something that we should all be advocating for. I mean, it's a great foundation for the students to be able to do well later on. It's a way of identifying some students that might need eventually special needs. It's a great way also for them to socialize. I agree with Dan. We should definitely focus on us first. And if there are other seats available, then we can make it available to the rest of the towns. I can see that the tuition that they pay is coming back, that the tuition that they pay will help us with the staffing and additional resources that might be needed. But the priority will be for us. Opening to other grades, I feel the same way. We should take care of our students, our children first, and then later on, either seats available, then make it available to other, as long as they don't become a burden. Because sometimes, even though the tuition that they're paying might help, it might not be just the best thing for the students and for the school.
Thank you. Dan, did you want to say anything in the last 10 seconds of your
I think I'd covered most of it. I apologize for that.
Okay.
But, yeah.
No worries. Okay, so this is the last question on sort of that particular topic. This is, I'm going to try to keep this one to 45 seconds. And Dan, this is you up first. So Leonia has successfully developed shared team sports programs with Palisades Park. Do you have any plans or strategies for sharing other academics, arts, and sports resources with Pal Park or other municipalities to maximize our school budget?
Okay. Oh,
it's Dan, isn't it? It's Dan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's actually a really great question, and I'll be frank. I haven't thought about utilizing other resources from that perspective, but that would definitely be something interesting to look into. I know, again, similarly, because we have, a bit of a smaller school district, looking to our neighbors all around to make our curriculum better, our sports or other programs better, I think is a very creative way of approaching that topic. But that would be something that I'd love to look into further. But as I said, something that I haven't thought of before, but I really do like that idea. If and where it makes the curriculum and the student experience better for Leonians, then I would definitely support something like that.
Thank you. Okay, Kim, you are up for that question.
It's a great question. I think in terms of supporting music and art, we could definitely do more. We have really great resources with New York, being so close to New York City and having different music schools in Bergen County. I'm not sure if the schools have ever partnered with them like they do with Pal Park, but if they could work out an agreement in terms of bringing students to there or providing staff for extra classes, I think that's definitely something that we could look into.
Thank you. Anna.
I think it's a great idea. My kids are part of the PPL and they really enjoy it. But in addition to sports, looking at art and music, which are great programs for students, especially when we want them to become well-rounded. We can also look into other after-school activities, even SAT prep classes or advanced placement courses that maybe the school by itself would not be able to offer, but if there's an alignment between the schedule, it could happen. The sharing of resources will open more opportunities for students and also will eventually increase teacher collaboration as well.
Thank you. Roland.
Yeah, we just have to be careful that we don't conflate two separate issues. There are curricular activities and there are extracurricular activities. In extracurricular activities like the sports, that collaboration is not only possible, it is desirable, and that can also be expanded to other activities. Doing that within the confines of our curricular activities, then it becomes a whole different subject. Because we have primary responsibility for educating our children, and combining or collaborating with another school district just becomes very, very difficult from that point of view.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're moving on to a different topic. The next topic is sort of a combined topic that includes questions around diversity, inclusion, racism, and bias, mental health, stigma-free, and yeah, those are the two topics, and also needs of certain populations as well. And there are about 4 or 5 questions in this category. So the first question is going to go to Kim. Is that right? Yes, Dan just answered first. So the first question is, racism, discrimination, and bullying based on race, gender, and sexual orientation are issues that affect our Leonia students. What is your position on the issues of racial justice, anti-racism, diversity and inclusion programs in our schools? And what are 3 concrete things that you would do to support diversity and inclusion and to protect those that experience discrimination and bullying? And I just want to sort of make a point that I had a bunch of questions on this, and I think to make sure that we sort of cover the breadth of it, I hope you guys will comment on 2 particular populations, so our Black and Brown students and our LGBTQ students. So if you can think about that question in specifically those contexts, that would be helpful. Let me know if you need me to repeat the question because I know it was long.
Yeah, Lauren, could you just repeat the 3 concrete ways?
Sure. Yeah, so the first part was, what is your position on sort of issues around racial justice, anti-racism, diversity, inclusion? And what are 3 concrete things that you would do to support diversity and inclusion and to protect students who may experience discrimination and bullying based on their race or their sexual orientation? Oh, and this I gave 90 seconds because it was a mouthful. So I'm going to give you a minute and a half for this. If you don't need it, that's fine, but I wanted to give a little bit more time.
Okay, I will try to tackle every part of that question. It's a very, very important one right now. I think the school system has really changed from 10, 20 years ago. I think the school has not just a need, but they have an opportunity to educate parents, all students, families, staff on this range of issues related to racial justice, inequality, bias that's going on right now. I think the conversations are probably happening in homes and they need to be happening in the schools if they aren't already. I think our teachers are really our greatest resource for this in terms of how they can look at the curriculum and see if the curriculum they're using is addressing racial justice and if they have any programming that they need to incorporate. I think probably when I went to school, there was not nearly enough in the curriculum. And over the years, as educators have looked at curriculum mapping, it's started to improve, but we could do a lot more. In terms of the 3 concrete things we can do to support that, again, the curriculum offerings are huge. Let's look at our textbooks. Let's look at what online resources we have. Let's look at community partnerships. I think for the second thing, I think the anti-bullying programs that are in place need to be supported. Oh, done. And
you can say one more thing.
The last thing is just working with the guidance department on a lot of these issues and making sure that the teachers aren't alone in this. They have the support of guidance and school social workers.
Thank you. So Anna, you're up. I'm going to give you a minute and a half, but I'm going to give you a little grace also. It's a tough question. Okay, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, and I can definitely relate to this. Recently, in my school, there were some issues that some students face, especially African American students. The minority of our students are African American, and they had some issues with other students that were using the N word, and they were using it just as a playful. It was for them. It was really uh, they were playing. They didn't mean it, and it really made me think as how can we support students and making sure that they know the background to that word, because some of them did not understand. We started meeting with the students and especially student government and said, you know, how can we create a more inclusive environment? Students came up with great ideas, so that's something that I'll do. With the student, give ownership to the students. We have to give them more credit. And usually they come up with great ideas that actually they will be able to implement. Looking at the curriculum, what is being taught, are our students being reflected in that curriculum, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. And I can give you an example is that my teachers stop using the you know, guys. Sometimes we'll say, oh, guys, you know, and I can, you know, I can say that even in some cases where I, you know, I teach a class and just out of as a term of endearment, I'll say guys, but we started saying scholars. We're not using he or she, we're using they. And that's really being conscious of students' sexual orientation and sometimes also identity. So it's really educating ourselves and also teachers. We also did a lot of work around implicit bias. There are a lot of biases that we have, and sometimes we're not aware of those biases, and they actually impact how we work with students in the classroom and outside. And looking at how can we start teaching the student from early on in ninth grade, bringing in people, presenters that they can talk to, having advisory session with them. So those are some of the things that we can definitely do to support students.
Thank you. Okay, Roland.
I'm in strong support of our students turning into strong, resilient, independent individuals that define themselves not by a group identity, but by their talents and the path that they choose to move forward in life. Our school district is an extremely diverse school district. There is some 40 different languages spoken in the homes in Leonia. And as Anna said, empower the students to give them the power that they as individuals can address adversity when they experience it. I am probably the most outspoken member of the school board when it comes to HIP reporting. I ask the most questions about our HIP reporting, because the HIP reporting is now an administrative flow of paper, and I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the individual impact those incidents that are reported to the school boards have on the students involved, and how we can address that, and how the students are empowered to deal with that when they are confronting it. We all have biases. Being aware of our biases and how they impact others is an important goal, and I'm all in favor of policies that support that.
Thank you. Dan.
Thank you. So in response to the first question, my stance on the position, I mean, it's clear that there's absolutely no place for any type of racism or bias, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, sexual preference, religion, in the school district or in our town. I mean, that's something that I stand by 100%. And in terms of the second question, which I think was asking for 3 concrete areas, and you're asking for in particular, when it comes to either Black, Brown, or Hispanic or LGBTQ, I actually only have one concrete answer. The Board of Ed actually passed a resolution in June. It was the resolution to advance racial justice in the Leonia School District, and that did include other components as well in terms of biases. But that was only a resolution, right? It outlined many components, which actually I think were very great ideas in terms of not only education for students, but also education for teachers as well. Because it's important that the teachers get the same training that the students are getting so that everyone is on the same page. And what's also, I believe, an extremely important component is that it's happening, throughout the district, like not just in incidents where this class is having a problem, but that resolution is all it is right now. It's just the resolution. And I mean, anyone can go online and take a look. And if you can just give me a few more seconds, it is just a resolution. And that resolution, the most important part of that is a component in there that mandated action by June of next year. And if there's anything that anyone's going to do, I would ask that you all hold the Board of Education accountable, to hold the administration accountable for coming up with and executing on that plan. Because it's a pretty good plan if you look at it, and it includes a lot. And I think it's important that there is accountability for that and that it be acted upon and followed through on.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a few more related questions. So this is going to Anna. What is your vision? And this will be 60 seconds. So what is your vision for maintaining a psychologically safe and stigma-free school community for K through 12, especially as it pertains to students with mental health problems and disabilities?
Again, I can relate to that. I am in a specialized high school, very high achieving students, and with that comes a lot of anxiety and expectations that are set by themselves and also their families. And in some cases, talking about mental health is really a stigma. Even today, I was talking to one of the counselors as a candidate, and I asked her, how do you manage that? For me, it's a lot of educating families. There's a lot of work that we do in school, but at the same time, we have to educate families through what are some of the resources that you have available. What are some of the workshops? And I held a lot of workshops on anxiety, depression, substance abuse, suicide ideation, difficult conversations that you need to have those difficult conversations. Educating students also. This is something that we do every year, a series of workshops on even, how do you do, what is suicide ideation, depression, how do you manage all of that? So it's really working with the families and students as well as teachers and being alert. My teachers will say that I'm very, that I just take things to the extreme, but I say, you don't want to go home thinking that a child says something to you and you did not report that. So you need to report, and being hypersensitive, because this is the world that we live in right now. And when the students are with us, we are the parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I was on mute. I was trying to stop you.
Sorry.
All right, Roland, sorry.
One of the most controversial and difficult votes during my first term was the question of armed guards in schools or not. My vote turned out to be the deciding vote, and I voted against it. And one reason why I voted against it is because we implemented a restorative justice initiative that provides resources for an additional school psychologist. Children will always have situations where they need mental health support. If we react to it, it's too late. We have to have the resources in place to recognize it before it becomes a crisis for that child. And that's why I much rather put resources behind another position for a school psychologist than to have armed officers in the schools.
Thank you. Dan.
Thank you. So this is a little bit personal to me. I experienced depression at some point in my life, and it was a very difficult time and a difficult thing to struggle through. And thank God I had resources available to me to help me get through that. But one of the most important things that helped me to get through that before anything really bad could have happened was just someone that cared and had, visibility into my life and what was going on, and the early identification of the path that I was headed down. And I think that's the most important thing, is to have that early identification. And that actually ties back into a lot of other points that we've discussed tonight, including class size. If class sizes get too large, then it gets difficult to pinpoint these things, and then take advantage of the extra guidance counselor that was made available through Roland's vote. But I think one of the most important things is to have that early identification and the training for the staff to kind of be able to just notice when there might be children that have potential issues or concerns. And I think that's the best way, or one of the best ways, to help keep them all safe.
Thank you. Kim.
I think my vision for maintaining a safe district would really be about communication and these relationships between all the service providers we've been talking about, the psychologist, the guidance counselor, the child study team, the school safety team. It's really about the relationships and how those people can work together to help the students in all three buildings. I think there's a big misconception with mental health about how it might only occur with older students and, at the high school level. And I think a lot of us would be shocked to find out that even kids as young as 5 and 6 can suffer major anxiety. So really addressing the needs early at the pre-K or even NK level would really help our students.
Thank you. Okay, so this is for Roland, another 60-second question. The latest Leonia school performance reports indicate that Latinx students, who make up about 20% of our student population, are underperforming on various academic measures when compared to their peers at each of the 3 schools. What will you do to ensure that our school system helps this group of students and others who are struggling to succeed academically?
That is indeed a problem that we have. It is a problem that a town like Leonia that prides itself in the quality of its school system, we run the danger that we are overlooking those that are challenged. That is one of the reasons why my focus is on broad programs that include all the students, not just the academically successful, especially the ones that are academically struggling. We need to provide resources for that. We have programs in place that address that. The question is, how do you reach those students early enough so that they can have a basis that allows them to progress equally with the others? It's a real challenge. Our education committee is the one that is looking into that, and we need to provide resources to allow those students that are struggling to succeed just the same as our other students.
Thank you. Dan.
Thank you again. So I think the statistic that was given was 20% of the students are Hispanic and they're underperforming. And I think you said across the board, right? So, but one of the, I mean, obviously there's data there, right, that already shows it. I mean, Roland had just mentioned that, and he's on the Board of Ed, so I'm sure he's seen, more intricate information. So we know that there's an issue there. It's definitely a difficult issue to tackle, but I think one of the most important things is to get the students engaged in the curriculum, particularly if they're not English speakers. And the way you do that is by changing the curriculum. Part of the solution is by changing the curriculum to include curriculum that is more engaging to Hispanic or other minority students within the school district. I think that's one component. Obviously, there are many other components to it, but I think one area that the BOE actually has control over is to include in the curriculum, classes and just subjects to learn about that would help them to engage with what's happening in the school district. That is one thing that the Board of Ed absolutely has control over, and I think they could do to help increase those numbers.
Thank you. Kim.
Thank you. Roland mentioned that the Education Committee works on this issue, and if I'm elected to the board, that's really one of the committees I would love to help out on. I think my teacher background, really, I've addressed this in the middle school I taught at. It was a huge issue at that school where this group of students was underperforming. And we worked on data collection and really finding the areas that they were struggling with. I think the important thing is to identify the specific areas of the curriculum that they're underperforming in or that they need extra help in, and then really working to find concrete solutions. Do they need extra help with homework? Do they need language help? Are they ESL students and they maybe need translation of some of the curriculum materials? Could we provide tutoring to these students? Time up.
Yeah. Thank you. Anna, have you answered that question yet?
No, I haven't.
You're the last one for that
Yes.
question.
For most of my career, I have worked with low-performing students. In the South Bronx, I had a graduation rate of 44% when I first started into school. And then a year later, it was 50%. Majority of students Hispanic, some of them who were born here, some of them who were just recent immigrant. So that's really my work, because every child is important. And just like Roland said, early intervention is key to make sure that the students do not fall behind. Looking at the students that usually fell behind, it was really, some of it is because of the lack of literacy skill, not being able to write, read, and also think critically. So with that is really looking at how are they being taught, what is the curriculum, how are the teacher differentiated for these students, and what supports can we give them without tracking. Let's not put the students in a different class and say, okay, these are the low achieving students, because that doesn't work. Research shows says that tracking students in such a way doesn't work. Students learn better from each other. Looking at families, let's look at the family. How can we support
And
them?
I'm sorry, that's your time. I'm sorry. Okay. We have one more on diversity, inclusion, racism, and bias, and that's going to go to Kim to start. It's another 60-second question, and then we'll move on to a different topic. So there's a little bit of a background here, so just listen closely. A recent study by Microsoft shows that most girls become interested in STEM in school around the age of 11, but their interest starts to wane by the age of 15. The reasons range from peer pressure, lack of role models, and support from parents as well as teachers, to a general misperception of what STEM careers can look like in the real world. The research also points to ways to better support girls and young women in STEM. What will you do as a Board of Education member to support STEM programming for girls? And this is 60 seconds, and this goes to Kim.
Thank you. I think, again, like a lot of these topics, it's about looking at the curriculum at every level. Are we addressing, are we addressing the needs of female students at a really young age? I think they do lack role models, and they need to have people in their, if they don't have people in their lives, they need people to come to the school and kind of be role models for them. So if we could bring in speakers or parents who work in the field of engineering, I think that would be a great thing for the students to see. It's unfortunate to hear that, but I think if we start at an early age at the pre-K and K level, and if the board support it, looking at the curriculum more, then that could help.
Thank you. Anna.
My school is a science school, and we look at data, and looking at some of the data, we realize that many of our girls were not enrolled in advanced placement courses in science. And when we look at the data, we said, how can we make this possible? Because one of the things is exposure. Some girls are not pursuing science career or computer because they have never been exposed. We made it really as part of our mission to make sure that the girls had the first seat to those classes, calculus classes, and also computer science classes. Part of that is also exploration of careers in science. We have a big career fair every year, and we make sure that we have representatives from all different careers, but especially female representatives, so the students see themselves in those role models. And I'm up for time.
Thank you. I'm going to try keep myself unmuted so you can hear it. I'm having trouble keeping up with the 10 and 15-second rule, though. I'm going to try to get better at that. All right, Roland.
Yes, we need to provide our students the opportunities to experience successful role models, successful modeling, have a curriculum that opens up the opportunities for them. We're already doing that. If you look at our Science Academy, I do not believe that the Science Academy is predominantly male. The question is, when you look at the entire student body, whether that still holds true, or whether student preferences changes. We had this conversation earlier about the trade academy, where we want to provide opportunities for students. We need to do the same thing for the STEM fields, but it is ultimately up to the students to choose their path that they want to pursue. So opportunity, yes. Predefined outcome, I wouldn't even know how to define it.
Thank you. Dan.
Thank you. So working as an engineer, this is a real life issue for me. In an office of about 50 employees, we have 2 female engineers. So it is clearly not something that's only, what starts in the school level, it only gets worse as you move up and get older in age, and get into the workforce. So in terms of, in terms of policies or what changes I would make, most of I think all the other candidates and we all agree, and it sounds like everyone is on the same page in terms of making sure that the curriculum is there, that we have role models, that we have exposure for our young female students that may have an interest. But I think also more than that, some concrete ways that where you could help promote and sustain that interest is promoting perhaps some additional clubs, making sure that there are enough science classes that are not restricted in terms of access, but that's open to all. So maybe there may be some girls that don't have the grades, but do want to, have an interest, but can't get into the Science Academy. They really shouldn't be excluded from that opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, so this next question is going to go to Anna. And it's about security. I'm changing topics a little bit. Just for those of you on the call, I'm a little over halfway done with my questions. So I'm going to try to speed things up a little bit. So, but this may go late if folks want to stay on. There's kind of a core section that I want to get to regarding COVID and restart. But I want to give you all a break from the heavy stuff. So although this next question maybe it won't be, well, anyway, let's get to this question. We're gonna talk about security and spending briefly, and then we'll go into COVID. So security. So what are your thoughts about utilizing armed retired police officers? I said armed retired police officers for our school security as opposed to the current unarmed guards. And what other security and health-related initiatives are important to keeping our children physically safe from harm while they are in the school?
I remember this question from last year. I still feel the same way. I disagree with having armed security, retired police officers in school. I don't think that's a place for it. And our schools are quite safe. And for us, it's really looking at whether the other proactive measures we can take. I know that Roland spoke about restorative practices. We talk about also educating students about bullying, about cyberbullying, about how to be safe, because also I think it's important that students are able to gain some independence and to be aware of the surrounding. There's a lot, and I will be spending that money in a social worker, an additional guidance counselor, or maybe an additional teacher or after school activities.
Thank you. Roland.
Yes, I'm on the record on this. I voted against it. I see no reason to change my vote or my approach to it. My concern is about early warning with regard to dangers and security related issues. And one of the neglected groups in our school is young white males who make up most of the violent offenders in school shootings, for example. What is it that drives a young boy to commit unspeakable violence? In the vast majority of cases, the FBI studies have shown the offenders were known. They were known to the police, they were known to their schools. So what early warning system do we have to have in place to recognize that there is a child that might be lost, that is going down a path towards either violence, bullying, drugs, or suicide, and save that child? That is where we need to spend our resources. That's where we need to spend our efforts. That's where we have to empower other students, because they are the eyes and ears in our buildings that are much, much better than any retired police officer that we could ever hire.
Thank you, Roland. Dan.
Thank you. I believe there's been many studies performed either for or against armed retired police officers serving as security in the buildings. And I mean, as many as them support them, there are just as many that do not support them. And kind of putting all of that information aside and just looking at it just for what it is, more guns is not the answer. I strongly feel that adding additional weapons in school is really not going to help the situation. I think what's more important, and this has been echoed by the other candidates, is really early prevention, right? it's much better to be preventing issues than to be responding to them. So early intervention and having the resources available to be able to implement early prevention and intervention is critical and important for for that fact.
Thank you. Kim.
Thank you. Echoing what the three other candidates have said, I do not agree with having armed retired police officers in the school. I would not vote for that. I do not agree with that. I think mental health services need to continue to be a focus. And just one thing that hasn't been mentioned, the school does already do these extra safety drills. If you don't have kids in school or don't know, they're very different than the fire drills. Unfortunately, they're drills about lockdown and shelter in place. So our students are kind of equipped with that knowledge. It's a little bit frightening, but they do practice it. And I know the teachers are very good at keeping everyone calm, and they practice it regularly. So unfortunately, it is a part of our school life right now.
Thank you. Okay, so for these next two questions, they were originally two, but I'm going to kind of combine them into one because they're kind of the opposite. So this is going to first start with Roland. Basically, people wanted to know if we have to make cuts because we get cut by our tax budget for whatever reason or because of COVID, what are the things you would cut? And the flip side of that, if for some reason we get a surplus, which we very well could, how would you consider spending that money? And I'm going to give a total of 45 seconds to answer this. I know it's tight, but cuts was something you would cut, and then versus getting some extra funds, how might you spend it? And I said that we're starting with Roland.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that is not how it works. We had passed the budget. And after we passed the budget that we are forced by law to live by, COVID hit and everything changed. So what you have to do is you have to live within the budget framework that you have set out to do, and you have to reallocate resources where you are allowed to do that. It is not easy, and that is the reason why we are starting our budget process that is due next May. We are starting it right now. Yeah, on Monday is another meeting of the finance committee, and we are starting our budget process now because we actually have to adopt a budget and then live within the means no matter what else happens. Yeah, we are not like the state that can borrow money. We are not like the federal government that can print and create money. We actually have to live within the means of the budget that we have adopted, and if necessary, make adjustments within that budget.
So Roland, I want to give you like 10 more seconds just to say, since you reframed the question for us, given the fact that you have to make these hard decisions, I guess think about it in the context of that, right? So when you're thinking about, oh, well, we had to spend all this money on technology, what's the thing then that we have to kind of maybe shave off of within the context of our current budget? So what are the things that you sort of see as potential ways to save money when we have to spend it somewhere else?
Yeah, there is a difference between reallocating resources within the budget that has strict statutory requirements and crafting a new budget. We have to spend extra money for technology that we did not plan. So what we are doing right now is within the resources that we have allocated. For the next budget year, we can reshuffle funds or rededicate funds to focus on that because we have that ability. The biggest problem in school financing that everybody on the board and in the public needs to understand is that it is constrained by a myriad of statutory requirements where the board has very little wiggle room. So our planning cannot go backwards, cannot go towards our current budget. It always has to go to the next budget that we are working on.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to give everybody 60 seconds. You can take it if you want it, because I gave Roland a little more time. And you can take into context what Roland has helped us understand as you answer the question.
Yeah, I think I'm up. I mean, having lived through the recent experience with ACS and the technology issues there, it almost seems like an easy answer to say, to spend the money there. And this is in the kind of the fantasy realm version of the question. In the budget version of the question, obviously, I mean, I still would think that that's where I would put the money, because that's where the greatest need is, at least right now, or it was. I'll actually correct that statement, because with the adjustments the Board of Ed made in the AB and the remote and in-person learning, I think that's addressed a lot of the issues very quickly. But in terms of what I would cut, that's without having more intimate detail. I wouldn't want to just say, what should be cut or what shouldn't be cut. I mean, I think the district's budget is about $34 million right now. And without knowing, how much and what we need to cut, I think you'd really need to dig in and take a look, because it's not like that $34 million is being spent, willy-nilly. That every penny that's being spent is being put to good use, and it for a specific reason. So to cut any part of that is going to require sacrifice somewhere else. So it has to be evaluated.
Thank you. Okay, Kim.
Thank you. Yeah, I think with COVID going on, this question has kind of like a fantasy realm and then reality. I think with COVID, I would definitely put the money towards any safety measures we can take, and then the technology, especially in light of what happened at ACS. In a perfect world, if we had some kind of surplus, I would really push for hiring qualified, experienced teachers. In terms of budget cuts, I actually looked at the budget before this meeting. I thought it was very tight. I mean, I think needs change every single year, and you would really have to evaluate them based on the specific needs of that year. I would say, can we just be creative and share resources along the way? But like Dan said, we'd really have to look at it line by line.
Thank you. And Anna?
I can relate to that because I make those decisions. I do have a budget, and which is about $8 million, and I have to make decisions as to where, when I need money, where do I cut? And I'm always reluctant to cut teachers and also any type of professional learning. If I were to cut something right now, I'll say supplies, especially paper and office supplies, because we are all working virtually. There might not be a need, and that's one of the easiest things to do that have the least impact. I will put money on mental health support, social worker, hiring an additional teacher or additional teachers if needed, looking also at technology programs. I'm always hesitant to cut teachers because we need teachers in the classroom. And the decisions, just like Roland said, sometimes it's not as easy as they seem to be. But you have to really look, what is your vision? Where do you want the school district to be? And for me, it's where do I want the school to be? And with that, I make the decisions, and sometimes they're not they're very difficult decisions to make.
Thank you. Well, this is a nice segue into COVID. So if you guys are game, we'll move there and we'll keep going. People are still hanging out on the call. So let's start with this question. There were many, and this is going to go to Dan. So there were many concerns that the handling of the hybrid/virtual learning plans were challenged and problematic by some people's account. Given that hindsight is 2020, is there anything, so had you been on the board, is there anything that you would have done differently during that time? And I'm going to give you 45 seconds for this one.
Thank you. And I don't know if that's going to be enough time, but I do have to start.
There's more for this too. So.
Okay, then I'll try to keep it focused to this. But I mean, I do have to say that the board definitely put in a lot of effort into getting our students into school safely or getting them educated at home in a fashion, you know, that would provide equal education for everyone. One of the key things, and I know this is more of an impact for for ACS and some of LMS, but for the remote learners and the tech issues, I mean, coming from a, you know, science and technology background myself, naturally one of the questions that came up for myself was to ask, you know, with all these computers that are going to be online, you know, have you tested the system to confirm? And it's always a trust but verify, right? We have the BOE has staff to take care of this, but they need to verify and prove that they've done and are capable of providing what the Board of Education is telling to the public is possible to is that they are going to be able to do.
Thank you. Okay, Kim.
Yeah, I want to thank the board first. I think they took on a monumental task and they did what a lot of other districts couldn't accomplish. So you know, hats off to them. I think the main thing I would have done differently is something near and dear to my heart, again, goes back to education, and thinking about how the Zoom and in-person learners, it's just very hard to combine them, and that an all virtual class was really needed at ACS anyway, right from the beginning. And they've kind of worked out the kinks, and now they have created that. Unfortunately, at the pre-K level, that's not possible with the staffing restrictions. But just, I think 2020 hindsight, they maybe should have known that if you're a teacher in the classroom, you really cannot teach in-person learners and kids at home on Zoom effectively.
Thank you. Okay, Anna.
I work on the school reopening plan for my my school, and based on some of the guidance that was given to me by the chancellor. And in order to develop the plan, I invited parents, students, and teachers to give feedback. And when we developed a plan thinking that, having in mind that we wanted all students working remotely or on site to receive the same quality of education, and to ensure that teachers also were not overwhelmed. Just like Kim said, teaching remotely is very different than teaching on site. So looking at it, I'll say it's less how do we program our students to make sure that all students at home and also in school are receiving the same quality of education, and also how do we support the teachers with this transition to make sure that they have the tools to do the Zoom meetings, to do the Google Meet, and all the other work that it's quite challenging.
Thank you. Roland.
I think with our reopening plan, we achieved two things. Number one, we came up with a comprehensive plan that was different for our high school, our middle school, ACS, and for our special education students, by involving all stakeholders in this. And that was a monumental task. All the people that worked on that deserve our gratitude for having put in countless hours to accomplish that. And the second thing that we have accomplished is that when we realized that something was not working, we didn't insist on this is the plan and this is what we have to do. We learned from it and we adapted to the different circumstances that we realized. I have been asking a question at every level that I've been able to, from here all the way to Trenton, and that is, what do we do if we find that the two modalities that we are teaching, hybrid in-person and virtual only.
Roland, can I stop you there? Because that is one of our questions.
Okay.
So that way I can ask it and then you can all comment on that. So, and basically we can just lead right into that. Although I think it's going to be Kim sort of answering that one, but keep your answer in mind, Roland. So the question is kind of like multi-part, but sort of feel free to comment on any of these items. But basically, what are your thoughts on the current hybrid virtual learning plan? What are the pros and cons of one and or the other? And what ideas do you have to balance the needs of the virtual and in-person learners? So I think that's going to get at what Roland was about to talk about. So let's have Kim dive into that question.
Okay, how much time do I have?
I'm going to give you a minute for that one.
My thoughts on the current hybrid plan. I am currently experiencing it at the pre-K level, which is, it's actually fairly difficult being new to a school system, new to ACS, and kind of meeting lots of teachers through Google Classroom and Zoom. I think the board is doing the best they can with the restrictions in terms of not being able to have a full school day. I think a lot can still be done in terms of accessing the special teachers. That's been challenging. In terms of balancing the needs of the virtual and in-person, I think the board did a really great job. And like Roland said, they listened and they pivoted and they did create at ACS those all virtual classes with the all virtual teacher. And I think, you know, time will tell. It's early, it's only early October, and I think it's going to keep changing, and things might change again with the second marking period. But they might need to reassess based on parent and teacher feedback.
Thank you. Okay, Anna. Do you want me to let me know if you need me to repeat the question?
No, I remember, and I went through this at my school. We have a number of students who chose hybrid and to attend on site. And then for me, it was really, but the majority of them were chose remote. Is how do I balance the needs of both groups? And it was really not that many students. If I were to put my teachers in front of the students that came to the building, I'll have to have killed a lot of classes. And not only that, the students that came on site will have lost their teachers, and I was going to end up with substitute teachers. I want my teachers to teach my students. So I had to make the decision and see what was best. And for me, it was really remote teachers just working with students remotely, because it's very hard as a teacher, and I teach one class, to be able to do both at the same time. And also it's very hard for students to do both. I had a lot of meetings with families and students, and at the beginning, probably 4 weeks ago, I have 70 students, and right now I only have probably 7 students coming on site, and they have their own teacher. I mean, they have my teachers, which they did not lose that.
Thank you. Okay, Roland.
Our biggest challenge right now is that we don't have any data. We are all participating in a humongous experiment, and we don't know what the outcome is. And we're doing this with our children. That is why I keep raising this question, and nobody has been able to give me an answer. What do we do if we find out that the two modalities that we are forced to teach right now, because of a decision that has been made by the governor, that the education outcome is not equal? What do we do then? We know that the younger grades have more problems with the virtual environment, as is understandable. We also know that underprivileged populations have struggled much more with the virtual environment. You just have to read the weekly report that came out today from the middle school. We have an issue with ghosting. Kids show up, sign in for the class, turn their mic and camera off, and disappear for an entire class session. They are not present in our schools. We cannot intervene into their homes. How do we deal with this? How do we adapt to that? And what path will we ultimately follow to a more normal learning environment. The environment we are in right now is exceptional, but it also will have to end at some foreseeable point in time.
Thank you. Dan.
There's definitely no question that there are difficulties with and differences between at remote learners and in-school learners. But the one thing that I think is clear is that the goal, it has to be equity for all of the students. It may be extremely difficult to achieve given the current circumstances, but no matter what, that still has to at least be the goal that we strive for. One of the ways that I think that we can support and help reach that goal, and to what Roland was saying, was to test and see what's going on and how this is being effective, is to, to require the administration to start looking into and checking out how the classes are going. It's really not the Board of Education's job to actually really look in specifically on the classes. And when you ask whose job is it, it really is the administration's job to go in and find out how are your teachers doing. You can poll the teachers, and I would willing to bet that one source of data might simply be that purely the number of emails that Bryce is receiving since the change to the at-home and full remote teaching classes, or excuse me, full remote and in-school teaching classes. I think that would be one interesting data point to see. Thank
you. I'm going to say like maybe 3 more questions or so. I'm going to combine one of them that's about the teachers. So, and we can give about 45 seconds to a minute for this question. So the question is basically, do you think we're supporting the teachers enough? And do you think the teachers have had enough say in the process of creating our virtual hybrid situation? And I think that's going to go to Anna first. So I'm going to give you a minute, but.
Teachers are essential to the work. They really have the greatest impact on the children. And in order for the children to do well, we have to make sure that we support them. I don't think we're supporting them. Sometimes when I'm working from home, I can listen to some of the teachers as to how they're teaching the students, my kids at home. And I think that had there been more input from the teachers, maybe the teachers doing remote will only do remote, or the teachers doing on-site will only do on-site. Teaching is very difficult to begin with, and having to plan different lessons. And sometimes you have teachers, even in the middle school, that have 3 different preps. You have a teacher who's teaching social study, math, then portfolio. Poor teacher. I see emails sometimes at 2 a.m. in the morning because she's working. So it's a lot of planning, and if they don't plan well, they will not be able to deliver the good lesson for the students. So I think we can definitely do more for our teachers.
Thank you. Roland. Oh, you're muted. There you go. Oh, you're still muted. There you go.
I got it. It's a nicely open-ended question, so you can answer both yes and no, and you could equally claim that you are right with it. The question is, let me reframe the question. Did the teachers have a role to play in our plan? Were they fully involved in the decisions that were being made? And the answer to that question is absolutely yes. They were part of that process from the very beginning to the very end. Did they get everything that they wanted? No, absolutely not. Because there are compromises that have to be made at every single step. And unfortunately, with limited resources and the framework in which we have to operate, we can't make everything happen and satisfy every single constituency. The one constituency that is the most important is the educational outcome for our students. That's been at the forefront of what the Board of Ed has done, the forefront of what the administration has done, and I believe the teachers would agree with that.
Thank you. Dan?
So I think looking at it from the time frame of when just before school started and then right when school started, I would have to say from hearing, various teachers speaking on the various forums that they weren't getting the support that they needed. I do believe, though, that they had the opportunity to express their opinions and share their concerns. And I think some of the concerns that they brought up did come to fruition with the issues with tech, and then also with the issues with the ask of the teachers to teach remote and in person. But I mean, and using that as my basis, I haven't heard as many complaints, at least with the BOE and on the BOE meetings, but not being on the board myself, I don't know specifically how well things are going. I can say that now that we've gone to full remote, my students, my children's teachers, they seem to be a little more at ease as opposed to before when they were being asked to do both on top of, on top of teaching remote and in person. They're asked to monitor the children for health and among many other things, including being concerned about their own health. But just gauged on what I've experienced personally, it seems like that the teachers' concerns have been addressed for the most part, that they are being supported. I mean, I do have questions on whether or not the facilities are still being cleaned as they were promised for the teachers, if they're being given enough tech training, if they're getting the devices that they had asked for, so that they can do the job that they need to do. And it's important to support them from that perspective because they are, they are teaching our children, which is the most important thing.
Sorry, my timer didn't work on that one.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Okay. Kim.
I think when school reopened, there was a lot of stress and tension was high, and I think it has calmed down a little. So I think, there's kind of a range. If you ask people, are we supporting our teachers enough? I've heard different things at the town hall meetings. But I do believe that going forward, we need a lot of input from our teachers. They need to have a collaboration and a partnership with members of the Board of Ed so that they're not working in isolation. And I think to kind of track the support, we need to be doing teacher surveys, and they need to be having regular meetings with the administrators who can then pass on that data to the board and to the community. We really need to keep our teachers happy.
Thank you. All right, the last two questions. These are about communication and community engagement. So the first question is about, and I'm going to sort of, again, combine two questions here. So I think this question comes from a couple different sides of things, but basically the board has improved their communication drastically, I think, over the past year or two. But there's still some people that don't feel like they're getting all the messages they need, and they feel like sometimes they hear things too late. So one question is, how would you make sure that the board is communicating actively with the public? And then the other sort of flip side of that is people want to know how you will make sure that you are representing what parents and community members feel, what the values and opinions of community members and family members in the community are. So how are you going to gather data from your quote unquote constituents if you are to be elected? So basically the question is really, how are you going to manage that back and forth communication so that both you are making sure as a board member that the townspeople know what's going on, and that you are receiving information regarding feedback, opinions, things that matter to people in the community. So I'm going to give you 60 seconds for that question, and that's going to be Roland to start.
That was actually one of my first things that I did before I got on the board. I actually initiated the videotaping of every board meeting because the board at the time refused to do it. So I went to a meeting and announced that I would be live streaming every single meeting from that time on. And wouldn't you know it, 2 weeks later at the next board meeting, the board adopted a policy to start live streaming all the meetings. This board has been the most communicative board that we've ever had in the 20 years that I have lived in town. We're using multiple channels to put out the information. We updated our website to contain more information. We are putting out the information as much as we can. Can we do better? Yes. And that's why I asked our board to have a community communications committee that actually continuously looks into better ways of communicating with the public. But that is communicating with the public. And what the public is entitled is to know what we are doing in their name and provide them with the opportunities. It's still up to the public to show up at our meetings. Our virtual meetings have been a tremendous draw. We've had 300 people attend Board of Ed meetings. I wish in-person meetings would be that popular.
Thank you, Roland. Okay, Dan, I'm going to give you 1 minute, but I'll give you a little extra time if you need it. Okay,
no, thank you. So communication is actually one of the main reasons why I'm running. That question actually rings home very, very true to me, because one of the important things about communication is it's two-way, right? Communication with the board, I 100% agree, has increased significantly in terms of announcements that are going out and just identifying to the general public that there are meetings going on and what's on the agenda. And that is a huge credit to the Board of Education. But I think one area where there's room for improvement is in engaging early, identifying issues that do need to be engaged early upon, and then having meaningful conversations where feedback is taken from those conversations. Not simply opportunities to defend decisions that are going to be made, but genuine opportunities to hear the concerns from the public about issues that are of true concern to them, and taking that information back and helping it to shape the decision that's being made. And granted, the Board of Education is a body of members that are voted into their position and they are given power. There will be some decisions that they'll make that people will not like, but that's the unfortunate burden that the Board of Education has to bear. But when it incorporates early and meaningfully, I think that becomes a much easier burden.
Thank you. Okay, Kim, same thing. I'm going to give you a minute with a little wiggle room at the end.
Thank you. I've been thinking about this issue a lot lately. I think because when I talk to young families at the playground or before at the library or any events in town, there were so many families who either did not know what the board did or didn't know about their website or it wasn't in their language. So I think the board has done a good job, but there's always room for improvement. And we really need to be reaching the young families in town who are not part of the system. You know, I think when you have kids at ACS in the middle school and the high school, you're kind of in a bubble and you might assume that people have the same information that you do. But if you're not receiving the messages on Genesis, then you're kind of out of the loop a little. So we need to find a way to bring those families in who don't have kids yet in the school system, but who are about to, they're leading up to it. And again, communicating with families whose kids have graduated, but they need to be aware of what's going on too.
Thank you. Anna.
I agree with Gina and Dan. I think we have to communicate and over communicate, especially during this pandemic, because if not, there's going to be a vacuum that's going to be filled with rumors and misinformation. It worked both ways, just like Dan said. Yes, the board has done a great job communicating with families, updating the website. I get daily updates from ACS and the middle school from all from the two schools, and I know what's going on. And Genesis is also an excellent way of communicating with families. But at the same time, is how does the Board of Ed include family before decisions are made? Having town hall meetings, creating surveys to see what are the needs, what are some of the things, what are some of the pressing issues that we might be able to take care of. And if parents feel, and I know that you cannot satisfy everybody, I'm a principal and I know that there's some tough decisions that have to be made, but if families feel that they're being heard, they most likely will be attending board meetings more often because they feel that, okay, I'm attending and what I said actually counts. It's not just a formality, but it's genuine interest. The more that we communicate when we are actually implementing making difficult decisions, they will understand because at least they heard that this might be a possibility. It's not like something that they did not hear before and they just get it later on. Okay,
Thank you.
This just happened.
So I think we'll wrap up there. That'll be our last question. So I wanted to give everybody on our panel a final chance to sort of tell everybody why they should vote for you. So you'll each have 1 more minute to just give your closing statement. I can just let you know that people were interested in hearing what committee you might be interested in. So if you want to weave that into your statement, you can do that. I know Kim already mentioned. Well, you're going to start with Dan because Roland was the one to answer the last question first. So I'm going to give you a minute on the clock, Dan.
All right. Thank you very much. I mean, you've heard a lot of my thoughts and feelings about what's going on with the Board of Education and the school district. I would love to have a position on the Board of Education where I would serve on the Long Range Facilities Plan Committee, as well as community relations and potentially finance. I think those areas tie in well with my experiences as a civil engineer. Lots of experience with planning and executing on complex projects that involve multiple stakeholders, which require a high level of communication and interpretation of information that's coming in from various sources. And ultimately, I just do want to say that, regardless of what happens with this vote, there are 3 seats and 4 of us. I think Roland mentioned it in the beginning. But this is a win for the borough no matter what, and for the school district, because we have volunteers that are willing to step up and serve this school district and serve our students. And I think that's the best thing for us right now. But thank you, and I hope for your support if you haven't voted already. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, Kim, you're next.
Okay, thank you, everyone. This has been such a pleasure. It's been really wonderful talking about all these major issues, some more serious than others in terms of everything going on with COVID. And I just wanted to say that, as Lauren was asking, in terms of the committees, I would really love to have an opportunity to work with the Education Committee. And one thing I didn't get to mention was if I was elected, I would like the opportunity to create a permanent pre-K committee. I think based on all the questions that were brought up tonight, it's kind of been shown there's a huge need to keep discussing these issues with pre-K and to have it be not just an ad hoc committee, but one that's a permanent part of the board. And just, I wanted to thank everyone. I think the questions have been excellent and really made me think about a lot of serious topics and be more flexible in my thinking. And I would love the chance to work with everyone in town and to get to know everyone better and really be a part of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Anna.
This is my passion. This is what I do. And I've been doing this for 22 years and I don't mind. Actually, it will be an honor to be able to serve my community, the community where my children are growing, where they're going to go to high school. I want to make sure that schools are good, not for my children, but for every child that attends school, that attend school in Leonia, and I think we do have a lot of potential. I would love to serve in the education committee. I think that my experience as a teacher and also as an administrator has actually prepared me for that. And I'm a learner. Right now, I'm pursuing my PhD and I'm doing all the programs because for me, it doesn't stop. When we stop learning, then we become stagnant. And this is really something that we should be teaching our children, lifelong learning. And it's a challenge, but it's definitely a challenge that I'm willing to take because it's all about hard work and dedication. I ran last year and I said, oh, I'm too busy right now. And so people approached me and I came back and hopefully, you know, if it doesn't happen, it has been an honor to be running with all the three candidates, Kim, Roland, and Dan. And I know it definitely will be a great experience. And I hope that you come out and support me. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And Roland.
Thank you, Lauren, for putting on and moderating this civil discourse about very important questions for our community. And thank you for everybody who spent their Friday evening with us. These are strange times when the best show in town is watching 5 little heads on your screen. But our schools are an important part of our community. When I first ran, I said I would run and serve at most for 2 terms. I don't believe 1 term is enough to make an impact, and more than 2 terms is more about ego than getting the work done. There are a number of important things that our Board of Ed has to face over the next couple of years. The long-range facility plan and tied in with that, the long-range financial plan are very, very important. Our finances are something that we have to watch very, very careful, and we only have to look at our sister district in Edgewater to see how quickly it can go terribly, terribly wrong. I have the advantage of being the only incumbent, so I have a track record. And I asked the voters of Leonia to hold me accountable for that which I have set out and for the record that I have created. My goal for the board when my time on the board ends, whether it's after this election or after the next election, is that I want to have made a difference on how the board interacts with the public and how it creates a permanent record for all future boards, so that future boards can understand why decisions have been made and how they have been made.
Thank you.
We are all trying to do our best, and the public is entitled to say yay or nay whether we should continue to do so. I hope I have your vote.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to the panelists tonight for participating, for sticking around for a little bit longer. Thank you for the attendees for staying around for 40 extra minutes. And I think the most important message I have to say on this call is to vote, vote, vote. Get your neighbors to vote, your friends to vote. Vote. Put that ballot in one of the boxes in one of our neighboring towns or in the mailbox. Get that vote out sooner rather than later. So thank you everyone for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Tomorrow is supposed to be a great day, so get outside.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.